the hard part, which is keeping you folks awake and interested after having such a great meal. Thank you to the ladies and maybe even some of the men that were involved in that fantastic meal that we shared together, physical meal. And I've always said this, the highest form of fellowship is worship. That's my studied opinion. The highest form, but the next highest form is a fellowship meal. Coming together and the bond that it brings for each and every one of us when we can come together and just sit down and enjoy food together and just get to know one another better. And I've got to know a lot of you just from being here. You're a great congregation. Keep doing what you're doing. I see a lot of love, a lot of care, and especially love for the Lord. And so I pray that the Lord bless you, continue to bless you in your efforts as you strive to work together in this area and do His will. I want you to think about Gadsden, Alabama. It may sound familiar to you, it may not. Their claim to fame was the world's largest yard sale, wasn't it? We live over, really we're not in Wytheville, we're between Wytheville and Hillsville, Virginia, and every year or twice a year, actually Hillsville hosts a flea market, a similar event. And we kind of batten down the hatches when that happens because where we live, we're on one of the highways that lead over to that. In the little town of Hillsville, they quadruple times 10 as far as the folks who come into town for that type of thing. That's our forte. You think about the world in which we live today. Yard sales are popular because of the economic climate for a lot of folks. We enjoy yard sales. My mom, before she passed several years ago, she was a yard sale nut. Just wore Dad out. Saturday, her and her sister, my aunt, would get in the car and they'd go yard selling all day long. That's what I call it, yard selling. I guess that's an appropriate term. Spend all day just going to yard sales to see what they could find. And we all know the saying, one man's junk is another man's treasure. And that is so true. And sometimes we ride by, I've done it, and ride by and the side eye of what's in the yard. And Lenita and I, well, it's nothing but junk. It wasn't anything we couldn't live without. We keep on growing. But it is a popular thing to do. But I want you to think about this for just a moment. What would you give your soul for? What would you exchange your soul for? And there are a lot of folks doing that. They're doing it even right now, even today. They're trading their eternal soul for something physical, something of this world. And if you recall Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, Jesus said, you can't serve God and mammon. You can't do it. But let me say this about mammon. It's not a bad word. Mammon just stands for the physical things of this life. Use the mammon that God blesses you with to serve Him better. And you can do that. If you've been blessed with a nice car, help someone get somewhere. Help them get to a doctor's appointment or bring them to services or whatever. You have a nice home and you have a way of hosting, bring some folks over who might be struggling in their Christian living or even some friends or neighbors, but you use the mammon to help you to accomplish God's will as such. What would we give our souls for? A couple of examples I want to throw out before we start selling off some items I got here in the box or offering them. You can go through the list of folks in the Old Testament. I think about Samson. And Samson in Judges chapter 14, he sold his soul for lust, at least at that point. He comes into town, I've seen a woman, and he just like that, he went into her. He sold his soul for lust. We read about Ahab, the wicked king. He had that wonderful good wife Jezebel. We know about Jezebel. Do we not? We name our daughters after her, or maybe our dogs, if our dogs are female and not nice. But, he sold his soul for a piece of land. She had Naboth killed, and he was able to take what was someone else's. So he sold his soul for that. We think about Judas in Luke chapter 22. Sold his soul for the price of a slave. 30 pieces of silver is what he would take for his soul. Demas, 2 Timothy, there in chapter 4 and verse 10. Demas has forsaken me. Why did Demas leave Paul? Was it that he got tired of following Paul around? He got tired of living the Christian life. Maybe he got tired of the persecution when you think about all that Paul faced. We don't know, but he sold his soul for the world. He went back into the world. So this afternoon, I started saying this morning, this afternoon, for just a few moments, I want us to go through some items I have here, some items that I'm going to offer in the yard sale. Let me just see what I've got here in the box here, dig amongst my mess here. This is one of my favorite items. I've got here, and it's pretty heavy. I've got a wedge. Now, where we're at, it's a popular thing to burn wood in the winter, especially with the way AUP's gotten to be, but I'll leave that there. I won't go any further with that, but we never burned wood and heat our house with wood till now. Lenita couldn't be around it, but we have a basement section where I can put a big old wood stove. We got the chimney going all the way to the basement, and I'll crank up that fire down there in the wintertime, and it just heats the whole house. To get that wood, I have walnut trees and oak trees on my property, and several the Lord has taken down for me, and I just had to get them cut up and get them split. And just recently, I finally bought a wood splitter. I'm getting too old to weld an axe and a wedge. This is handy. It's heavy. It's handy. And you go to the yard sale, and a lot of times there will be that table with the tools on it for us guys. And the girls, you walk on by, you're looking for the pottery and the dresses and the frou-frou and all the other. But this is handy. You get one of these at a yard sale for a couple of bucks. And it's a handy tool to have when you got to split some wood. And I want you to think about it in this way. This could be viewed as a tool of Satan. The wedge. 1 Peter 5 and verse 8 is a roaring lion. He's walking about seeking whom he may devour. And so we're to be sober, we're to be vigilant, we're to be on guard all the time. Because what will Satan do? He's going to take that wedge and he's going to wedge between you and God if he can. And you and one another, the wedge of division. And that's one of the D's of the devil. That's hard to say fast. But we have to be careful. Distraction, division. There's a lot of other D's. I did a sermon years ago on the D's of the devil. But that's the worst one, is getting between you and between each other. And between you and the God of heaven. And he will do that to try to cause you to get off track and get distracted and get divided. And I think about what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 10. He's beseeching them, and it's by the authority of Christ. What does he say? You all speak same thing. Be perfectly joined together. I think of dovetailing. When you think about being perfectly joined together. I always think of wood joinery. My wife's father, he's a woodworker. And over the years, we've come to appreciate that. We had some furniture for sale once, and the lady called and said, do they have dovetail drawers? If they didn't, she didn't want it. And it did, this particular piece, but we know what, everybody will go home now and look at the drawers if you haven't already. That is the strongest bond. And it is most perfect, and it is beautiful. And you think about that and how we're joined together, and this idea of locking together. And you're in lockstep with one another, and therefore, as Paul says, you're in the same mind, the same judgment, same direction, the same Savior, same church, same body, same everything. And that's what the Lord wants of us. So, we're not going to buy the wedge. We'll just leave it at the yard sale. Well, let's see what else we've got in here that we can get into. Well, because I brought the big size, and good thing Denver's not here, he'd be getting hungry. I have to pick on him a little bit and have a good time with Denver. Those boys as students, it's hard to fill them up. I know, I was that way when I was in school. You go to a yard sale, and some of the really good yard sales will put snacks out on the table. Buy a candy bar, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1. Get a bag of chips. And you're out all day long and you're at the yard sale. And what happens? You're like me, you get hungry. Man, I need a snack. You buy that bag of chips there at the yard sale and you're walking around. And for us guys, we're following our wives. And you can't eat just one. You can't eat just 10. You've got to eat the whole bag if you're like me. That hand keeps going. Is your hand in the bag again? Yeah, it is. The next thing you know, it's gone. And the chips are gone. And here's the point. We're a society that is just all about instant gratification. And there are so many folks that are selling their souls for that one month. I want that. and I'm lusting after it, and I want it so bad, and for just a moment I want to have that, and they have it, and it's gone, and they're in a situation they don't want to be in. It's like these chips. Oh, they were good, but they're gone. They're completely gone. And I don't have anything anymore, and so, you know what, we're done with the chips. And the instant gratification is all over with. We could read about a man that was just like that in the book of Genesis in chapter 25. Do you remember who it was? It was Esau. You have that aha moment. Yeah, I remember Esau. He had his brother Jacob, and Esau was a hunter, and he would go out and hunt. And I'm sure Esau stayed out and hunted for days and days and days, and perhaps he had a bad day, and he didn't get anything on this particular occasion. And he comes back and he says, I'm so hungry, I'm about to die. I've said that a few times myself, and no, I really wasn't. Lenita convinced me of that, but that's where he was at. I'm hangry. Here's Jacob. Jacob says, oh, brother, I've got a yard sale item for you. I've got some stew or soup. He gave his birthright. He gave us just for a moment of satiation of a physical appetite, and to think about what he lost. And then to really realize, when you go over to the book of Hebrews, I believe it's in chapter 12, and I can't bring the verse to mind. I won't say it's down about verse 14 or verse 16. And when the Hebrews writer tells us that Esau was what? A profane man. I don't think he would have done that if Esau hadn't done what he did with his birthright. He sold it. He gave it away for a moment of pleasure. And we understand about, profane man. We understand about profanity and what profanity is. That's taking God's sacred things, and it's like just putting them on the floor and just stomping around, walking around on them. Hebrews chapter 10, I believe it's down about verse 28 or 29. It's like taking the blood of Christ wherewith we have been sanctified, counted as an unholy thing. It's almost like taking the blood of Christ and we pour it on the floor and stomp around on it. When we, as a child of God, and we, for that moment of instant gratification, for just a few moments, like that bag of chips, and I want that, and I just can't control my desires and my lust and my longing for it, and we go for it, and we realize, what have I done? And so we don't want the bag of chips. We're just going to skip that. Now, if you do go to the yard sale and you get hungry in the real physical sense, you can do that. Well, let's see what else I have in here and see what we can deal with. Okay, one of my favorites. I can hear her. I don't see her. I hear her cringing. I always get the ugliest one. We've got a box upstairs of baby dolls. Our daughters grew up, moved out, got married, and they left behind some baby dolls. And I think my mom actually bought this at a yard sale a long time ago, and it ended up getting put in that box. So this is one that it's my go-to doll. Okay. You go to a yard sale and you can usually find something like this. You got a daughter, a granddaughter. You want to get them something. You don't want to spend a lot of money. And a lot of times, if you got your child with you, Mommy, I want that doll. Doesn't matter how bad, how forsaken, they want that doll because they want to love it. This doll needed some loving. And you think about Jesus, you go to Matthew chapter 18. Become like little children. Of such is the kingdom of God. What a great thought if we could be like children are in our thinking, our attitude, how we deal with one another. And we all know the analogy. Two little kids they get mad at each other on the playground. They have it out for a minute, and then the next thing you know, they're best friends again. It's forgotten, and they move on. Why can't we learn that as adults? And in Matthew chapter 19, here's moms and dads wanting to bring their children to Jesus. And I tell folks at Fort Chiswell, it's the greatest example. Bring your children to Jesus. Bring them to Jesus. Do it every chance you get. And in the Bible, literally, they wanted to bring their children to Jesus. You remember the disciple, the master's busy. He doesn't have time for these kids. Jesus said, no, let them come unto me. Let them come unto me. But here's the point I want to make about this. Secondary. There's a difference between childlikeness and childishness. And childishness has no place in the Lord's church. And sometimes as adults, and we don't get our way, whatever it might be. And I've seen congregations in the years of being a preacher's son where Dad would preach, and it was time to replace the carpet in the building, and somebody wanted red and somebody else wanted green, and I didn't get my way, and I want to get mad, and I quit. I go somewhere else. Childishness. What will you give your soul for? Color a carpet in a church building? And sometimes we are immature when it comes to handling and dealing with one another. Doesn't matter. Street's going to be gold where I ultimately am going. At least that's kind of the analogy of the Bible. And that's what we need to be focused on. And we need to make sure that we're putting aside the pettiness and the immaturity and all the things that where we are like little children. We're childlike in our attitude and in our love. Children love unconditionally. Think about your grandchildren and even other children. We need to look at them. That's the church of tomorrow, too. So, I don't know. Maybe we want the doll because we want to imitate that. And maybe we don't from the standpoint of childishness. So, let's leave the childishness behind. And let's not do that. So, we think about the doll. Well, let's see. What else do I have in the box here? I got another bag of chips in here, actually. Let's see here. I got just a couple more items. You better hurry or there won't be anything left. I've got a toy truck here. And this actually was given to me by one of our members years ago. He was a Chevrolet man. And he loved Corvairs. If any of you remember the Corvair, he probably had a dozen of them. And we bought one a few years ago and started restoring on it for Lenita to drive. Thought it was kind of cool. Never could get the transmission right. It was going to get spinny. And we're like, so we got rid of it. But Larry Govan, he gave me this little Ford truck because he's a Chevrolet man. And it's sentimental to me for that reason. Plus, it's just a kind of a cool, nice, it's an old Ford truck. It's heavy. It's one of those cast iron or metal or whatever, not iron, but metal, and doors open and all that cool stuff. What do you do with something like this? You take it home and you find a shelf. You know, for some guys, they might put it, I'm going to put it here where it'll fall off now and get broken. And you'll find a shelf somewhere at home. That's what I've done. I've got to put up on the shelf. I've got a few others kind of like that. I don't really collect them, but because he gave it to me. But I've got a little 3-year-old him and our little red-headed grandson. And even our other 2 grandsons, when they were much younger, and they come in and see that, and they wanted to get it, and they wanted to do what with it? Take it outside and just get down in the dirt and run it through the dirt or in the living room, and eventually it gets broken, the little side mirrors or doors or whatever, and it'll get broken. This is what you call a show horse type of thing. You display it, you show it off. Look at this, isn't it cool? And everybody comes in and looks at it and whatever. And if you're an old vehicle or, for us guys kind of thing, it's neat. We think about some folks are like that. They're like this truck. Just put them on the shelf. And the idea of Satan says, well, you can look good in religion. You can look good. I'll sell you that. It'll cost you your soul. And a lot of folks will do that. They can look good and they come on Sunday and the outward appearance, and they're much like the Pharisees of the first century. They make the Satan says, I'll make you look good in religion, and everybody else will think you're okay, and everything on the outwardly. And you go to places like Matthew 23. Woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. And that word originated in the first century, as I understand, from what we get the word hypocrite, was a word used for actors. Makes sense. A hypocrite is an actor. They're putting on an outward, they're being somebody or something they really aren't. They're not their true selves. And that's what Jesus is saying. You're just actors. Your long flowing robes and your phylacteries with the scriptures on it and your prayers but on the other hand, while you're looking all religious, what are you doing? You're running widows out of their own homes. You're converting those who will be twofold. I think it's twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. And they were clinging to the traditions of the teachings of men were more important. I need to watch this edge. I'm going to go off here in a minute. More important to them, those traditions and the Word of God. So the Satan will sell you on that. There are a lot of folks who were like the Pharisees, oh, it looks good. But it's not something you want to get out and really play with, work with, do something with. And so, I don't know, maybe we don't want this after all. Maybe we want to leave this behind because it's just something, it's just to put on, it's useless. And I know in every congregation, I imagine that's the case this afternoon, that there are those who go beyond just being something that sits on the shelf and the outward appearance. You guys are the core, you're the workers, you're the people who love the Lord and are working in His kingdom and being busy. I want to encourage you to keep doing this. Maybe we don't want that pickup truck after all. Well, here, I got another item. You'll get a kick out of this one, I'm sure. One stilt. Now, who would be dumb enough to go to a yard sale and buy one stilt?
One-legged man.
One-legged man. Okay, thank you. I've never gotten that before. I'll have to add that to my thought. Nobody but a one-legged man. Now, these are fun if you have two. And, of course, I kind of made this one just to get the point across. But, with two, you could get on and walk around and have some fun, maybe. Yeah, I see some head shaking. No, can be dangerous. Really, with one, it's useless. Your mind's already running to where I'm going with the one. You can't do anything. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. There, the wise man Solomon talked about two are better than one. And the idea is we need each other. It's going back to, and I'm so proud of Denver, he said he was going to use that analogy of the thumb, the idea of how we all come to the aid of a hurting member. He was going to use it. That's the way it is. That's the way God designed it. The church, we need one another. We lean upon one another, and it takes more than just one. We don't obey the gospel, and I've obtained salvation, and now I'm going to go find a cave, and I'm going to go off and live like a hermit the rest of my life, and not have anything to do with anyone else, and I'm not going to share my faith and what I have. I'm just going to be all by myself. No, you can't do that. It takes two. And Solomon, he made that point. Two are better than one. He talked about, as far as for defense, staying warm, all the advantages of being more, and that's the idea of us. When we bond together and there's more than just one, we can fight more easily against Satan. Hey, brothers and sisters, I'm dealing with this right now, and I feel like Satan's coming at me, and I need help. And pray for me. Fervent prayer, that's what it's all about. Confessing our faults and praying for one another that we might be healed. And we need that because sometimes I can't do it by myself. I need you. And you need me. We need one another. It goes back to that wedge to start with. But it takes two. And with just one, we get a whole lot of hurt, a whole lot of problems, a whole lot of issues. I think about we've got to band together, and it needs to be more than that. So I don't know. Maybe we don't want this after all. Maybe we'll leave the still behind. Maybe so. I've got one more item, last item. I'm giving y'all kind of a short version of this afternoon. Better hurry, or you're not going to be able to get anything. Always go to the yard sale and get a hair dryer. I guarantee it. There's always that table, and you've got and there's always a hair dryer. And we've got one brother at our congregation. I presented this lesson some years ago, and he had alopecia, is what it's called. Lost all his hair because of it, with bald. He struggled with that, but I'll tell you what, I told him, Brother Morris, was one of our elders, I said, you rock the bald head. You do it better than the Rock. Y'all know who the Rock is. And he does. He looks better without hair. Some of us probably would and do. You go to the yard sale and you buy a hair dryer, and the problem with this is typically most yard sales, they don't run an extension cord out there where you can try stuff. You have to buy it on faith, blind faith. And the person selling it, oh yeah, it's a good hair dryer. Give me 50 cents, take it home. Get out of my way. I'm done with it. That should be a red flag right there. You get that thing home, wash your hair. You're in the bathroom, go plug that thing in. Nothing. Doesn't work. You bought a hair dryer that doesn't work, and I put all my faith in this hair dryer. And now, if you're like me, my wife will attest to this. I'm going to take it in there to the dining room table and get my screwdriver. I'm going to take it apart and find out why it doesn't work. Could be a loose wire, might be something I can fix. Usually it's not. But you take that thing in there and you open it up, and sure enough, it's fried inside out. It's toast. It's done. There's no hope for it. I want to close with this thought. All of us at one time or another are like that hairdryer. First off, we're not working. No matter how much power you can give it, it's just not working. We need a fix. And we're all burned up on the outside, or inside, and we're all used up. And it just seems there's no hope and it's unfixable. We can get that fix through Jesus Christ. I think of 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 21. For he, God, has made him, that is Christ, to be made sin for us, that we through him, through Christ, can be made righteous. To give you the shorter version of that. Jesus, who would take our lives where we are used up, and our lives where we are burnt out, our lives where we've been used and abused, and difficulties and obstacles and all the things that are going on in our lives, and we give it to the Lord and he can fix it. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden. I'll give you the rest. May not come in this life, but it's hope. It's the idea of hope. So we think about this hairdryer as we close this afternoon. Now this one actually does work. It's just illustration purposes. But you know, we can be like that. And most of us here this afternoon probably were like this at one time. And thanks be to God for his unspeakable gift. I believe it's Hebrews 9:20. It's 9:27. I can't remember the book it's in. That's what Paul would say. Thanks be to God, his unspeakable gift of his Son, who came to this earth and endured what he did. Go to the cross, give his life, so I can be fixed. He can remove the stain of sin. He can remove that which is tainted my soul and make me whole again. You've been a wonderful audience. It's been a great day to be here. Lenita and I are so appreciative of the congregation here. I want to say this in closing as we offer the invitation. If you go anywhere as a Christian and you find a body of the Lord's people, you're at home. Anywhere is home on this earth. You're among friends. You're among folks that you know will love you and you can love them. We stand for the truth, and I want to encourage you, keep standing. Let your light shine brightly on the hill. And one of the speakers this weekend, we put too much emphasis on that little wooden board. I don't know if y'all have one, maybe out in the not the auditorium, the entryway. You know, how many actually are here, show up. But put that aside. What makes you what you are is your faith. Let that stand. Be great and mighty in your faith. And shine your light brightly all throughout this area. Keep letting it shine. And let your neighbors, your co-workers, your family members, everybody. You had somebody this morning. So encouraging. I didn't realize what was going on initially, and it struck me because I've had that happen at Fort Chiswell where somebody comes in and it's like somebody looking for the Lord and looking for his body and looking for his people. Keep doing what you're doing. And may the Lord bless you in your efforts. Don't know what the future will hold, whether our paths will cross again. Lord willing, I'll see some of you perhaps at the men's retreat next year, but if not, as one preacher used to say, and I loved it, if I don't see you in this life, I will see you in eternity. Be together with one another. Sing praises and worship our God for all eternity. If you're here this afternoon, and I think we're a body of baptized believers, I would assume that of accountable age. If you're here, you have a need, you need prayer for sin, prayer for encouragement, prayer for whatever. Or there might be someone here who's not put on Christ in baptism. I'm sure we have men who can accommodate that. But if you have a need this afternoon, don't leave without letting that need be taken care of. We love you and we want you to go to heaven. So if you have a need, won't you come? Let's together we stand and sing.